Today, I want to welcome Nils Vinje. I always get that wrong. I used to live in Sweden and everybody there was Niels, but he's Norwegian and he is Nils Vinje. He is a pinnacle business guide. He is a best-selling author of the 30-Day Leadership Playbook. What a great place to tell leadership stories other than leaders and legacies. He helps businesses scale and break through barriers that are caused by structural issues. Nils, welcome.
Thank you so much, Craig. I'm not going to hold it against you that you lived in Sweden for a long time because I'm from Norway. My family's Norwegian. There's a lot of good fun to be had between the Norwegians and the Swedes.
Well, I think I've traveled in your area, because you're not far from Prekestolen.
Right.
Uh, and for those, if, anybody who's followed the Mission Impossible series, if you remember like this big sharp cliff, I forget which MI Mission Impossible it was in.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but I know where you're talking about. Yeah.
That was that is the only time I could not walk up to the edge of a cliff. Normally I'll walk up to an edge of a cliff and look over.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it there. I had to get on my belly and kind of inch over. It terrified me.
For a good reason. I mean, that thing is it's crazy. It's absolutely incredible. But and in Norway and in Scandinavia as a whole, I mean, the scenery is absolutely unreal. The fjords, the mountains, the cliffs. It's just one of the most beautiful places for sure.
So here's something that's funny. I was there. I went to Norway over 4th of July weekend. I was working in Sweden, but I was on an American contract. And so I told the Swedes, I was like, "Hey, it's 4th of July, I'm taking it off."
Nice.
And and they said, "There's still snow up there in like July."
Yeah, yeah.
And they said, "What are you driving?" I'm like, "A Volvo." "Oh, you're fine." Like they have this idea that Volvos can just conquer all.
Well, can't they? I mean, they were the indestructible greatest export out of Sweden. Literally they would run for hundreds of thousands of miles and they would just conquer all. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that.
I was driving the first generation front wheel drive
Yep,
Volvo,
yep, I remember
and it had
those.
serious torque steer.
Yep.
But
And did you make it to your destination?
I made it. It worked out great. I mean, it was amazingly beautiful. I took the ferry from Helsingborg, Sweden, up to Oslo,
Yep,
and then just immediately started driving across the country to the coast
yep.
and stayed in a little town called Sand or Sands, I forget.
Yep.
And then went over to Praxtolen, drove through Bergen, and just kind of drove around. And it was amazing. And one of those things where pictures will never capture.
No, they
You
can't.
can't take a picture
No.
to describe Norway.
Yeah, no, that's not. They're in books, but it just doesn't do doesn't do it justice. You have to see it firsthand, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I think surprises people about Norway, the so I think last year or a year ago, something like that, there was a deep freeze in Chicago and all the Teslas just came to a
Yes,
halt. They couldn't even charge them.
I remember. Yeah,
And somebody said, "Well, the Norwegians have figured that out. Why can't we?" I'm like, "Well, most of Norway lives on the coast where, in the dead of winter, it's like 34 degrees."
yeah. And the population wise is more towards those areas. So absolutely, and they have the resources to be able to figure out problems like that for the entire country.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's wild to think that you can be inside the Arctic Circle
Yeah,
and in the dead of winter, it's still like right at freezing or a little bit above freezing.
agree. And within just a few hours, like I mean, Oslo isn't very far away from the edge of the Arctic Circle, right? And I mean, the true downside is the endless summer, which is beautiful and wonderful, and sun doesn't set until midnight or 1 a.m. But the never-ending winter, that's a whole different side. And my family's from Norway. I've never lived there, but I've visited many times. And we always visit in the summer in August because
Yeah.
it's absolutely gorgeous. And a family in Voss and Bergen and Oslo. Those are the kind of the three hot spots we tend to visit if we go back.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. So I think the biggest problem I have is in describing what you do. I know what you do, but I have trouble describing it.
You're not alone. This comes up from time to time.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, what do you do?
So, Craig, I work with CEOs of companies doing more than $2 million a year in revenue, and I help them align their leadership team to accelerate their growth. That's the single most important thing that my clients want, is to accelerate their growth. Now, when we get started, they don't always know that it's the leadership team that needs alignment, but in the end, it always is the leadership team that needs alignment, because when you get that team, all the energy going in one single direction, everything can change, right?
Hmm.
And lots of people talk about alignment, and it's a very common buzzwordy thing. But when you get true and total alignment across why the company exists, where we're going over the next 1, 3, 5, 7 years, how we're going to get there, what we're doing this quarter, how we're going to track this, measure it, all those pieces, when you have everybody on that leadership team 100% bought in, has created the plan, and accountable to that plan, then you can execute and you can accelerate growth to whatever level that you want. That's the fun part of what I do.
I used to work for a company where the CEO, I remember sitting in a meeting and hearing him say the same exact thing for like the fifth time.
Yep.
And I just
Mm-hmm.
remember wondering, why is he being so repetitive?
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized there's a reason he was CEO and I wasn't.
Very good point.
So why was he being so repetitive?
But because if you say things once, it doesn't really exist except in that moment. If you say it twice, it doesn't really exist except in two moments. If you say it 8,000 times, then it starts to make its way into people's brains, right? We are creatures that need more repetition than almost anything else. And this is probably one place that I see most organizations fall flat on, is the belief that if we set some course and we just tell people what we're doing, then everybody should be able to figure out where we're going and move along that path. The reality is, like, if you feel like a broken record with regards to reiterating what the CEO was saying, like in your example, or talking about what we're doing this quarter or what our goals are for this year, if you feel like a broken record, you're just getting started. Because what we're doing from a leadership perspective is setting the expectations at the organizational level. And then we have to hold people accountable to those expectations. But in order to hold people accountable, we got to reinforce those expectations. And we can never assume that people are just going to take it and figure it out on their own.
And does that fall under what you're talking about when you talk about alignment?
Yes, 100%. Because here's
Okay.
what happens as soon as, like, I share this, what I want to do this year with you. I'm CEO and you're part of the leadership team. And I share, here's where we're going. This is what we're going to do. Okay. And then you, Craig, see the world through your eyes and your experience and your expertise. And you interpret what I say, and you do make decisions based on what you think is best. And then the leadership team member number two does the exact same thing, and leadership team member number three does the exact same thing. So all of a sudden, we have this set. We're going in this direction, and then each member of the leadership team is making decisions based on what they think is best, but they're not all truly aligned, and that's where a lot of misplaced and just wasted energy goes, is in everybody thinking that they're doing what is best, when in reality, what we have to do is bring the entire team together, get complete and total alignment about the entire plan. Then we're all executing from the exact same source and not interpreting and making decisions based on what only we think is best.
Hmm. Okay. That makes sense. The Well, I don't know. Let me kind of back up. How'd you get into this?
Yeah. So everything I've done in my career up to this point has perfectly prepared me to do this work with leadership teams. I'll give you the real quick backstory. I can break my career into three acts. Act one was working inside fast growing B2B SaaS technology companies in and around Silicon Valley. I'm talking venture funded. Growth was the only was the only thing anybody cared about. Those environments were 24/7, 365, incredibly intense, and I learned so much inside of there. Got up to the executive ranks, was at the VP level, and I worked myself out of my job because I put the people and the systems and everything in place to the point where I wasn't needed anymore. It could run, my department ran without me. And so I decided then to enter Act Two, which was I'm going to go out, become a consultant, and help organizations do the same things that I had done inside of the companies. And I did that for the next 10 plus years, where I worked with everybody from early stage, growth stage, scale stage, public, private, PE backed, bootstrapped, you name it, all the way up to Fortune 100 companies to help them build these incredible systems and work people out of jobs. And that was a lot of fun and made a lot of progress and helped ultimately help these clients retain and grow their customer base. And then Act Three is the Pinnacle Act. And this is all about taking everything I've learned as a leadership coach, best-selling author on that leadership book you mentioned, all my work working outside companies, all my work inside companies, and then bringing that with and combining it with the unique Pinnacle system in order to help these leadership teams come together, align, and then scale as fast as they want to grow.
Okay. And I have one of the things I heard, it had to be at least 10 years ago, was I heard Silicon Valley was just like microdosing LSD left and right. And they were doing it not not for enjoyment, but more that they felt like they had to, because I guess it's like some type of amphetamine. It gives you energy. And I just remember listening to that report and it just made me so sad that you have to sit there and you have to do all this, not because, again, not for pleasure, but just for survival.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I never partook in any of that, but I certainly can understand it given the environment that I saw and was in and the pressure that was there. And like I said, like it was a great part of my career. And it was also the reason that I had to move on to the next act. It wasn't sustainable for me having a family wanting to not be 24/7, 365, but that was the reality of the world that I lived in. And I learned a tremendous amount and take all those relationships and learnings with me and bringing that into every type of business, whether it's one of my clients, the fence residential fence company, just putting residential fences in homes, around homes, and then another one is doing heavy duty trailer repair, right? So there's these, and another one's a digital marketing agency. So there's these vast different disciplines that I get to work with today that I'm able to adapt all the background and expertise and experiences I've had, because the principles of what it means to grow and scale a business remain the same. And that's what I focus on. I focus on the principles and then apply them in a customized way to each of my clients' situation. So regardless of what industry they're in, they're getting best in class from a principles perspective, customized to their specific and unique situation.
So I'm curious, so a lot of what you're fixing is dysfunction. And I'm sure you got like some salacious story of like dysfunctional on steroids. What's a good example?
Well, so yes, there are a great many stories of dysfunction, but here's the reality when it comes to dysfunction. It's only dysfunctional when you look at it from the outside, right?
Right.
And what I mean is when you're in it day to day, it's just normal. And that's
Yeah.
the way a lot of people live. So when CEOs I talk to come and say that they're carrying all the weight of the company on their shoulders, right? Or they're constantly just putting out fires, or they can't believe that nobody else thinks as passionately and drives as hard about growing the business as they do, right? That's frustration that exists. And while they might be living in absolute chaos and dysfunction, they just see it as the reality of the day to day. Now you take somebody from the outside like myself and I come in and I ask some questions about how things run, I might label that as dysfunctional, but they don't, right? And that's totally fine. It's just my perspective, my opinion. So my job is to see the holes that my clients can't see for themselves because they're literally involved in it every day. You know, the same thing in your business, right? When you're involved in something day to day, you can't see the gaps. But then you
Right.
meet with a coach and they ask you one powerful question, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, how did I miss that? How am I not doing that? How are we going down this path? And so that's how I view the dysfunction piece, that nobody thinks it's dysfunctional, but in reality, that is wasted energy that could be channeled together and to go into one direction to make them help them grow and scale faster.
Hmm. Um, I'm s- I'm still interested in. I like salacious stories.
Okay.
The
I got a good one for you. This is from back in the Silicon Valley days. All
Yeah.
right. This was prime time fast growth inside this particular company. I joined them when they had just raised their A round of funding. It was probably 10 or $15 million A round. I was with them for 3.5 years. During that time, they raised a B round of funding as well, which was in the 30 to $35 million range. They were a darling of the venture capital that funded them at the time because we had some incredible growth. And the organization, every time a startup goes through these stages, going from 0 to 1 million, that's a big shift. Going from 1 to 5 million is a big shift. 5 to 10 is big. And then you get 10 to 20 and 20 to 50. Those are kind of the general big chunks that people go through or you think about. And it's often true that every team and across the company has to evolve significantly because the team at 1 million is very different than the team you need at 5 million and 10 million, right? So this particular company, we retained the same CEO the entire time who acted also like a CTO, but we changed out the leadership team, no joke, every August for 3 years. The entire leadership team gone. And I was not on the leadership team at the time. I was working inside the company, and it was the weirdest environment because you know what happens every time you bring in a new leadership team. The entire company and culture changes. And we had the same CEO, but they weren't quite strong enough to drive the entire thing. So we, started with the early stage scrappy leadership team. Then they got kicked out and brought in this other, higher level had scaled businesses leadership team, and it completely destroyed the entire culture.
Oh,
Everybody, like it was a
absolutely.
mess, right? To the point where we eventually only way we exited was through a merger, call it in quotes, because we essentially got acquired by another company because we fell apart, right? So it was such short-sighted thinking on the, well, we just need a different leadership team and everything will be solved in 12 months. And then after 12 months, they're like, no, that we need a different leadership team. And it was like, you aren't looking very far past, this quarter. And that was one of the most interesting times because it was a whiplash type of environment for us employees.
Well, one quote that comes to mind is from General Patton, one of the greatest generals in American history.
Yep.
And he would talk about the difference between strategy and tactics.
Hmm.
And he said, strategy, you want to be like a steamroller. You set a direction and you go. Tactics, you don't want to be like a steamroller. You want to respond to the situation. And
Yep.
he actually said, you want to attack weaknesses, grab them by the nose and kick them in the pants, which in the
Yeah.
1940s, I imagine was quite vulgar.
Yeah.
And
100%.
but the what you're describing seems to violate the whole steamroller thing. If you're
Oh, yeah.
changing out the leadership team every year, you have a schizophrenic steamroller that's like on ice and just spinning around.
Yep. And that's why the eventually the CEO was forced to step down by the board, and a board member stepped in and negotiated the sale or merging of that company with another company because they had misplaced so much of the trust of, well, the employees and the leadership and the strategy and the steamroll. There was nothing, and we were just a bunch of people trying to find a way inside of a venture capital funded that wanted more exponentially more growth than we were ever going to be able to deliver because nobody was aligned. Everybody had a different opinion on where we should go and what we should do. And it was an absolute complete disaster and a
Wow.
big waste of close to 50 million bucks in raised capital by that point in time. They went on and they continued. And when they merged with the other company, I left at that point because it wasn't a great environment and moved on. But it was a significant investment for sure.
And it's interesting, living outside Silicon Valley, you look at it as kind of this enchanted place where entrepreneurs go and they, change the world and make a fortune doing it.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's an incredible story. Until you've lived it, until you've been in that world and know what it really takes, what it means, how it works. That's the view that most people should probably keep.
Yeah.
When you've been in it, it's just you see it everything through a different lens. And again, very valuable lessons regardless, right? That was a very strong point of how not to run a business. But from the outside, all that was championed was their A round and B round funding. And the fact that if you get that big of a jump on a B round, that means your valuation has significantly increased. So from the outside, it looks magical, looks wonderful. Like you're incredibly successful. On the inside, completely different story.
Yeah. Well, if we dial it back to smaller businesses, I'm thinking of a business. I didn't work there, but I heard some stories of it. And the head of HR was like sharing people's salaries and
Mm.
other confidential information. And I mean, I just remember hearing these stories. I'm like, somebody's going to get sued at some point.
Yeah.
And the CEO was just this great guy, but just, one of those I would say accidentally successful.
Yes. Understand. Hmm.
And so when you're going into a company, what are some of the first things that you're looking at to figure out, hey, we need to make some changes?
Yeah. Number one is the mindset first and foremost, that there is a desire to change and evolve and improve. And most of my clients get to the point where they've tried a lot of things on their own and they've accepted and realized and are vulnerable enough to say that I can't do this by myself. I need help. So great. That's like checkpoint number one. If I talk to a CEO and they're hunky dory, even if they're in a state of chaos and they, still think they can do it on their own, that's awesome. I applaud them and will support them, but there's nothing I can really do because they have to be 100% bought in and saying, you know what, the way we've done things up to this point has got us here. But in the famous quote in the famous book, what got us here isn't going to get us there. And so
Hmm.
then they need to start looking outside. So that's number one. Number two is really looking at, well, across these five principles that I was mentioning earlier. So there's five core principles that make an incredible business and will help you grow and scale if you get complete and total alignment of your leadership team around them. Very simply, Jim Collins nailed it with the first one, right? Which is people. We got to get the right people in the right seats doing the right things, right? And Good to Great, he championed that. It was it was just pivotal point in business world books and things, and still is will be a lasting impression for a long, long, long time. So we get the right people in the right seats. And usually when I ask the question, are the right people in the right seats? The answer is no. Either, people are in wrong seats, or we don't, people have been in seats for a long period of time, and perhaps they're really strong culture fits and they've been around, but the productivity is a little bit lower. So there's assessments and things that we do to understand, do we have the right people in the right seats in order to hit the next stage of growth? Right? That's number one. Number two is the purpose. Is it clear why the company even exists? Without a clear and compelling purpose, everybody's just showing up for either a paycheck, a job, or to check things off a list, which doesn't really inspire a whole lot of motivation, dedication, engagement, etc. So there's a big risk when companies haven't defined a purpose because there's everybody just, does their job, right? As opposed to everybody rallying together around this bigger purpose that they all agree to and all buy into. That's a much more powerful and engaged culture than one where people just show up to get a paycheck. The third one are playbooks. So if we have people in the right seats, we arm them, give them a compelling purpose, then we got to give them playbooks to ensure that there's consistency across the board. So we're looking for single points of failure within the organization and key people who have been there a long time, and all the retention, all the information about what's going on is in their head. That is a massive, massive risk to the
Hmm.
business as a whole, right? The fourth is performance. And so we got to help them perform at an exceptionally high level. This involves, setting clear targets, having great scoreboards, having ways that we can track and measure productivity, but also coach, enhance, and guide the performance of every individual inside the company. And then the fifth is really a byproduct. So if we get the right people in the right seats, we arm them with a compelling purpose, we give them the right playbooks, we help them perform at an exceptionally high level, then we get number five, which is profit, right? And that is essentially the market's response to how valuable of a service you provide. And when I say you, I mean the company as a collective whole, everybody from the CEO all the way down to the frontline, person working phones. That is the ultimate measure of how well or how much the market values what you deliver. So when I'm talking with the CEO, I'm asking questions to understand where they are across those five principles. And then there are gaps in one or more or all of them, and that's okay. And that's what we're going to ultimately do to drive the alignment is fill those gaps.
Hmm. Well, that's cool. That's cool. That makes a ton of sense. Nils, this just seems so incredibly basic, but so incredibly powerful.
Yes, that is I like to call it simplicity on the far side of complexity.
Oh, I love it. How, how can people reach you?
I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. So my name's pretty unique, so there's only one of me. It's pretty easy to find.
And
Nils.
spell that, just so people.
Yeah, N as in Nick, ILS as in Sam, and then Vinje, V as in Victor, INJE. Nils Vinje. Find me on LinkedIn. My website is my name, nilsvinje.com. Really easy, really simple. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes as well for them to click through. And yeah, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. Let's have a chat, even wherever you are, right? Even if you are not running a company today, I'd still love to have a conversation. If you are running a company, you want to scale, you want to grow, have an interest in aligning your leadership team, even if you don't have a leadership team. It's okay. It's never too early to start planning for these things. Once you get past 10 employees and once you get past 2 million bucks, and whether you're going to 5 to 10 to 20 to 50, right? There are pathways that have already been laid by others that you can follow. Success leaves clues, and I've got some keys to that kingdom from a success path, and I would love to share them with you.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on Leaders and Legacies.
My pleasure, Craig. Thank you for having me.